Hello, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Lyse, and I'm so excited that you're here for another episode. And today I have an amazing guest on the show, a very special guest, as a matter of fact. Today's guest is Serge Ngatta. He's a global product leader with over 15 years of multifaceted experience in product sales and marketing. Serge is an active member of the digital identity, fraud prevention, and regulatory compliance community. He served as the Senior Director of Product Portfolio Management for one of the top 3 credit organizations in the world. And in his past roles, he helped transform customer experience at Wells Fargo Bank and develop innovating dealer solutions at ADP Dealer Services. Serge holds an MBA with a concentration in strategy, marketing, and operations, as well as a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, a bachelor's degree in accounting, and he holds multiple certifications in product management, blockchain, and analytics. Serge is passionate about financial literacy inclusion in underserved communities and a lifelong learner. Today, Serge will teach us a few things to help us protect our financial identity. Serge is also my husband, so I'm excited for today's episode. If you might remember episode 50 of the podcast, season 2, where we talked about couple finances, but I'm excited to have him back on the show to discuss a very serious matter that we should all pay attention to if we are serious about building wealth. Serge Ngatta, welcome back.
Yeah, sounds good. I think I was there for episode 50 when we're celebrating that. So happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. I'm excited to talk about some of the stuff that you warn me about all the time. You're an expert in digital identity and cybersecurity. I just want to start with the basics. What exactly is digital identity and why should we pay attention to it?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good question. That's kind of the basis of e-commerce, right? And so digital identity essentially is how we show up online. As we've all experienced throughout COVID, a lot of the business and the activities that we do or we used to do in person have migrated online. Think about things like Instacart, like how we shop for groceries, right? I would have never thought that we'd use an app and actually get groceries delivered. But basically, your digital identity is how you show up online and how you are able to represent yourself online to purchase or to make transaction or to interact with anybody in the digital ecosystem.
So we've all heard of identity theft, and I'd love to talk about financial identity theft today.
Financial identity theft essentially is when fraudsters or scammers are able to get access to your information and represent themselves as you online. And so now, because they have your information, they're able to take on new credit cards, open accounts, contract loans, and etc. And they're essentially perpetrating your identity. And so they're going to take advantage of all of these financial tools, but you are going to be left with the bag because it's going to be your identity that's going to be impacted. And so essentially, that's what identity theft is. It's when somebody steals your identity and does nefarious things with it online.
Okay. So on this show, we like to talk about wealth building. So I would definitely love to hear more from this context. But what are some common ways that cyber criminals target individuals to access their digital information and financial assets?
Great question. That's actually kind of scary because in the world that we're living in today, we are giving up so much of that information for free to those scammers potentially without even knowing. So essentially, the basic attack is what we call phishing. And phishing is basically those emails or those SMS texts that you've received from time to time from people that you don't know asking you to click on a link or to complete an application, or they wanted to ship something to you, but your address is incomplete. So go ahead and click on the link and complete your address. And there's many ways to do that, right? So these thieves and these scammers pretend to be somebody that you trust to collect that information from you. I think one of the most popular ways of phishing scams is the Nigerian prince email. I think everybody's familiar with that, right? You receive an email from a Nigerian prince who told you that he inherited a whole bunch of money, but he needs your help to put the money out of his country. And so he needs your information so he can send you some money. And you get to keep a percentage of that, right? And some people always fall for that.
Still to this day?
Still to this day. It's all about being educated about it, right? And so there's still people who are falling for it. But nowadays, these scammers and these fraudsters have gotten even better at it with tools like artificial intelligence and et cetera. So essentially, everywhere where you are disclosing personal information. So think about social media, right? Like we share so much on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok about ourselves that they can always get that information and kind of triangulate that back to your identity. And other things like other services that we get online, sometimes you have to create an account where you have to give a whole lot of information. So think about, I don't know, you want to sign up for Open Table and just be able to make reservation to go on dates with your spouse. I mean, they ask you to fill up a form where you're sending your information. Now, these companies have to protect your information, but they can also be targeted, right? They can be breached. Fraudsters can get that information through those type of means as well. So there's many ways, but ultimately, it's all about just understanding what you're putting out there about yourself.
You said that we share so much information that can be used to steal identity online. We share that on social media. I think most dreamers right now are not thinking that they are putting themselves at risk. What are some of the things that we are sharing online that can be damaging?
I'll give you an example. A friend of mine a couple of years ago was so proud of his daughter just getting her learner's permit. He put a picture of a learner's permit online, and it was just in the spirit of sharing with his community, right? He's thinking that everybody in his network is his friend and they're close people to him. So he's comfortable sharing that information with it. But the thing that you don't realize is it belongs now to Facebook. That image belongs to Facebook and they can do whatever they want with it. And so anybody who's on Facebook could potentially have access to it, depending on if you are understanding your privacy settings. And when you're posting that picture, are you only allowing your friends to see it, or are you making it public? There's so many nuances when we're sharing information now online that we have to be mindful of that. So that's an example.
So for that specific example, I guess the best practice would have been to, outside of not posting it at all, to, I guess, mark off the information on the permit?
Absolutely. So what you have on your driver license, on your permit, is your name, your address, your date of birth, your height, your eye colors, whatever classification. So name, address, date of birth, those are what we call personal identifiable information. So we know that it's you when we see that information. And so anybody who has that, think about it, right? That's the basis for most of the applications. They just want to know who you are, so what your name is, where you live, what your address is, and how old are you? Are you eligible for the services? So with those three pieces of information already, I got a whole lot that I can do with it. Now I just need to add maybe your social security number and boom, I can steal your identity.
That's scary. You talked about artificial intelligence and how today people are using that to also commit financial fraud. I would love to hear more about that, but I wanted to share something that happened to me recently, right? I was traveling. Something happened during my travel. I don't even remember. And I reached out to Air France. I called customer service and they weren't very receptive. So a friend of mine suggested that I reach out to them on Twitter because he had been able to find success that way. So he said, yeah, just reach out to them and tag them and you'll see they'll be responsive. So that's what I did. I went on Twitter, I posted the issue, tagged Air France, and next thing I know, I get a reply. So they replied to the thread. When they replied to the thread, it said, contact us, send us a DM, and we'll try to resolve the situation. We are sorry. Everything seemed normal. But then when I DM'd them, they asked for very simple things that you would honestly give away. Like, what is your name? What is your confirmation number? And what is the issue? So I give them my name, confirmation number, and the issue. And then they ask for my phone number. So I give them my phone number. And next thing you know, I think the next day someone called me and the person on the phone asked me to explain the issue. And he apologized that basically prior to me reaching out on Twitter, Air France hadn't been able to solve the issue. But he said that they were going to take care of it. And so he was like, hey, I'm just going to send you a link, which, by the way, they've done multiple times. They send you a link to fill out some information. So he said, I'm going to send you a link to fill out some information. And I was like, okay. So then I received the link and I didn't click on it. I saw something that I didn't recognize. It wasn't an Air France website, but I wasn't familiar. And I can't even remember the name of the app. I wasn't familiar with that app. While I was on the phone with him, I asked him, because I was like, okay, this is weird. Because, I'm very careful about my information. How do I know that you are actually from Air France? He told me, how would I know that you have this issue? How would I have your phone number? And it all made sense. And I said, all right, let me call you back. I went back. Sorry to make this long story. I'm trying to make it as short as possible, but this is actually important so that people can realize like how far these people are willing to go.
That's right.
I go back on Twitter. I reached out to them again saying, hey, someone contacted me. I get a response. Yes, it's us. This is the process. And something just didn't seem right. So I went and I searched the name of the app that they wanted me to use, and I realized that it was a money transfer app. Why would an airline send me a link to a money transfer app? So I already know the next step would have been to gather my information to send me a wire transfer. And then boom, now they have access to my information. So I went back and I looked on Twitter and everything seemed fine. But then I clicked on the message and I realized that I had reached out to Air France and the address was, I think, US Air France. But then this reply to my thread came from US.Air France. So really, I had missed the dot. And that's when I realized that I was basically the guy wanted to scam me. This is crazy because if I wasn't aware, because I mean, clearly you talk to me about this stuff all the time, I could have gotten scammed.
Absolutely. And that's what's very, very frightening about this whole situation, because they're so sharp with it that they'll just introduce a dot or a dash or like a special character into a name that you're already familiar with, and you won't even notice it, right? Like the normal bank email is customer service at bankofamerica.com, right? They'll put customer.service at usbank.america.com. And you wouldn't even notice those things because the human eye is not trained to catch those things. And they do that all the time. They impersonate people that you follow. That was one of the big issues with social media and this whole identity verification, right? Like the blue check. They used to give it up to people who were celebrities and stuff. But ultimately, I think at the peer-to-peer level, there needs to be identity verification on social media so that you know that you're actually talking to a real human being. And I think they're starting introducing those type of things, but you have to pay for it. So, which is a different business model where I'm like, okay, why would I pay to tell you that I am me for a free service? So it's not quite well put together yet in terms of how social media is tackling this problem, but this is something that they need to do. They need to ensure that within their membership, they can differentiate between real human beings, bots, and all of those fake accounts that are just perpetrating and committing fraud.
There's a lot of work to be done because even with the verified, the blue check, luckily I got mine without paying for it, but still people get scammed. I've worked with people who have like big followings and still they're verified, but their followers still get scammed. There's definitely a lot more work that can be done there. But tell me more about, you hinted at that, how fraudsters are using AI now to commit financial fraud.
Absolutely. So that's probably the scariest thing out of them all, right? Because that's the prospect for the future. I mean, since last year, ChatGPT just exploded on the scene. And this year is the buzzword, right? We're probably at the top of the hype cycle when it comes to AI. Everybody's doing AI. And the fraudsters and the scammers are probably the first adopters of this artificial intelligence technology, because now with AI, they can do so many different things. As we defined earlier, right, the basis for scamming and committing fraud or identity theft is to make you believe that I am a trusted person for you to interact with. And then from that interaction with you, I try to steal your identity, right? It's called social engineering for people who are in the field. Now, with AI tools, the social engineering capabilities have exploded. Yeah. So I'll call you Anne-Lyse, right? And while you're picking up, I'll pretend that I'm calling somebody else. But my only purpose for calling you is to record your voice. I want to record your voice so I can train my AI model with your voice. So I'll make sure that I'm calling you, acting like it's a fake number, and I'll get you to talk for maybe like 5-10 seconds, as long as it needs for the AI to just capture your voice. And from that model, now I can just go and create conversation with other people, leveraging your voice. I can train my AI and I can sound like you online, but with my AI, I'll sound just like you. So can you imagine how scary that would be, right? Like for a parent, somebody impersonated their children's voice, or like your siblings. With those tools now, I can get you to give me some information.
The other day, you told me about something that goes even a step further, where you think, like, I'm talking to Serge, I'm looking at Serge, but it's actually not Serge.
Yeah. That's right. So this is amazing because it's something that's called pig butchering, right? And it's part of the romance scam. The romance scam are a form of fraud and scam that typically target people who are looking for relationships online, right? So think about sites like Match.com, Bumble, and all of those sites where people go to meet folks online. Essentially, the good old scam where you think that you met the love of your life, but it's really a scammer on the other end who's pretending to be in love with you for the whole purpose of asking you for money.
The way you explain this to me is that I could be having a FaceTime call, for instance, with you, or a FaceTime video call. And I'm thinking I'm talking to Serge because I'm seeing you and I'm seeing your mouth move, but it's someone else. How
Yeah,
do they do
yeah.
that?
So they're leveraging AI again, right? So with the artificial intelligence, they can create an image of an attractive young man or young woman, depending on who you are interfacing with. And they can use the AI as well to mimic like a foreign voice or an exotic voice, like an accent. Like think about a Eastern European accent or like a Latino accent. They can create all of that. And so the way their system works, at least what I've seen from this researcher in cybersecurity at Georgia State University, they have kind of like a system of two phones where one phone is actually their FaceTime capture, and the second phone is using the AI to change that person, right? So now I look like me when I'm doing a FaceTime, but on a phone that is communicating with you, I might look like Brad Pitt or like Denzel or something. And it's just AI. And so
Wow.
you think that you're talking to this very attractive person, and I make myself sound like, I have a Latino accent. And so whatever I'm saying when I'm talking, the AI is picking that up and translating that into a Latino accent. Essentially, you're thinking you're having a conversation with one person, but it's just totally fake. It's the same thing that in the last few years we've heard about deep fakes, right? I don't know if you've heard about the concept of
Yes.
deep fakes. Deep fakes are just like videos that maybe you've seen in the past that were doctored with AI. The real popular one that I remember was one of Kobe Bryant shooting a free throw. And when he shot the free throw, he started moonwalking. I was like, I've never seen Kobe Bryant moonwalk on a basketball court. So like there's no way this can be real. But if you look at it and you're not paying attention, you can get fooled, right? Especially if you're, think about, we're talking about social media earlier, right? We're getting a lot of information through social media, and our friends are sending us clips and videos through social media that we don't take the time necessarily to go and verify. If you are just taking this video in and not doing your due diligence, you might believe that we actually say that. And so those are kind of like the challenges of deepfakes and what AI is actually able to do to get back into the romance scam. They're pretending to be somebody that you would potentially fall in love with online. And while they're doing that, they just want to get to build trust with you over time. And they'll tell you that, yeah, they want to come see you, but they can't afford it. They have family issues, they have medical issues, they have financial issues, and they need you to help. If you're really their soulmate or person, right, you would want to help. And that's what these victims fall victim under, right? They start empathizing and really loving those people, getting an emotional attachment to those people, and they send their money out and they do that nonstop. And so it's very sad because they really target like older people, people who are alone and really want companionship. It's one of those things that AI is definitely going to have a significant impact on. And I'm really kind of sad about that.
There's a lot of talks about AI. Obviously, AI has been around for a long time, but now it's the development. When you hear things like ChatGPT, they can be great, but there's also obviously some drawbacks, which some of the things that you talked about are major
Yeah.
drawbacks of artificial intelligence. So obviously you work in this space, you have all this knowledge, and we only have a certain amount of time on the show to talk. And you've warned us about some of the ways that we can essentially get scammed online. I would love to hear from you, what are some of the ways that we can safeguard our personal information so that we don't get scammed?
Very good question. I think it all starts with what I call digital hygiene. You just need to start developing safe online practices. The basic one is to use strong and unique passwords. I think that's just like the foundation, right? Whenever you are creating an account, don't use the same password that you use for your prior accounts, because what happens is that if you do get hacked or if somebody steals your identity and they have your password for one account, now they can just go through all of the other accounts. And because you're using the same password, it's just easy for them to have access to everything and wipe you clean. So I would say start there. My strategies, I don't even create a password anymore. I mean, I think Google and a lot of the online tools have gotten so good at suggesting passwords for you, and they suggest passwords that are long, that are complex. So I'll use that suggestion. I'll make sure that I save it in my password manager. So using a password manager is another thing that people can do. The other thing that I would encourage folks to do when they're signing up for account online is something called multi-factor authentication. To break it down for you is when they ask you for your phone number or your email so that they can send you a passcode, because now it becomes a fail-safe method. If your password is not working or whatever, they can send you this code, and by you entering that code, they can validate that it is you, and you can always recover your accounts like that. And then just having safe browsing habits, right? I think this one is a little bit more difficult for people to do. Just understanding phishing emails. If you see an email from somebody or someone that you don't know, or an organization that you don't know, and it's asking for sensitive information, don't be quick to give it up. All right. Just make sure that you check, you do some validation, just like you did with the Air Friends Twitter account, right? On X, you just went and clicked on it and you realized that it was a different account. It was just written differently. So just having the diligence to just double check things that you receive online. Same thing for SMSs, right? Like you receive a bunch of SMS. That's another trend that we're seeing a lot of right now. People leveraging SMS to send you just fraudulent emails or fraudulent texts with links that are fraudulent and can allow them to pick up your identity. And they target a lot of business owners, right? Because they know business owners have revenue and they can be good targets. So don't click on those, and definitely make sure that you're protecting yourself. And then lastly, social media risk, right? Just oversharing, it's detrimental to you in the long term because you're just essentially giving information to people and they can piece the puzzle. Facebook has been around for like what, 16 years or something like that. So can you imagine how much information you've shared on Facebook if you're someone who's on there every day and just sharing information? I mean, now people have a 16-year track record of your life, and they can piece that together and obtain information that you may not necessarily want to share. And I know it wasn't the intended purpose because we wanted to create community with social media, but those are some of the nefarious outcomes that are coming out of it. I would say those are what you can do online in terms of digital hygiene. In terms of proactive measures, what I would encourage everyone to do is to monitor their credit. Now, since COVID, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are making your credit report free and they update it weekly. You should always check on your credit report to make sure that there's no new accounts or no new trade lines that are appearing on there that you didn't sign up for, because those are good indication of credit theft, identity theft. The other thing you want to do is to put a freeze on your credit. Because if, for instance, this year, you know that you're not going to want to open an account, you're not going to want to refinance anything, right? You're not going to go out to trying to sign up on a new financial account, freeze your credit, because what that prescribes the financial institution that someone comes in and try to apply on your behalf, they have to call or email or contact you, however you decided to get contacted on the credit freeze. And you can catch fraudsters trying to steal your identity because you put a credit freeze on there. Now, people need to be mindful that the credit freeze is only good for 1 year, right? So every year, if you're not contracting credit that year, just put a credit freeze on your account. I think it's easy. And obviously, document safety. So you want to safeguard essential documents like your social security cards, your kids' birth certificates, your passports, your driver licenses, your permits. Please, under any circumstances, do not post these online. Those are government issued identity documents, and this is kind of how you prove that you are who you are. And so you don't want anyone to have access to that and perpetrate your identity online. Those are kind of a few things that I want to share with your audience. I mean, there's definitely more, but I think this is a good start.
That's definitely a good start, and we might have to do a part 2. So dreamers, if you want a part 2, just leave a comment. All right. So, Serge, I always end the podcast with a round of rapid fire questions. The challenge here is to respond as fast as you can. In 5 words or less, describe your definition of a wealthy life.
A wealthy life in 5 words or less. That's tough. Creating unforgettable memories.
All right. What's the best book you've read recently?
Atomic Habits. I really like that. I think it was kind of one that reinforced the little things that you can do every day to create habits that will provide long-lasting results. It's a reminder again that it's not always about the big bang at the end, right? It's the journey, it's the little steps that you take every day that get you to where you're trying to go.
What's one part of your daily routine you can't live without?
I think the gym is probably my outlet, right? I love going to the gym and playing basketball and shooting around.
What's your favorite financial tool or app?
I love Mint still to this day, or Personal Capital, right? Or Empower as they're rebranding now.
If you had to pick one thing that you did to improve your wealth, what would it be?
I would say just the budget. I think budgeting is one of those things where you kind of rein in your finance a little bit and you allocate every dollar to an activity. And that way, nothing is just left to chances.
What do you want your legacy to be?
That's always a tough one. I mean, I want people to remember me as a loving father, husband, friend, individual, and always there to support his people.
Well, Serge, thank you for being with us today and sharing your insights. Honestly, even though we talk about this stuff all the time, I learned quite a bit today, and I kind of wish that we had more time.
If you want to do part two, we can certainly do that.
So until then, please tell the dreamers where they can find you.
I am on LinkedIn at Serge Ngatta. You can find me there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. That was Serge Ngatta. So such an insightful interview warning us about the dangers of financial theft, how to protect ourselves, and the new risks that are coming with all these new AI basically schemes that fraudsters are developing. If you like this episode, please make sure that you subscribe and stay tuned for this next video. I think you're going to like a lot. All right. That's it for today. Thank you.